Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the launch of the Road Trauma Support Group. My name is Tom Dar and I am proud to be your MC for tonight's event. Tonight you will hear stories from some of our members that have tragically had a loved one killed on New South Wales roads due to a criminal act. But you will also hear stories of hope and how members have survived due to the support that they have received from the group. The Road Trauma Support Group is the voice of families that have tragically had lost a loved one on our roads due to a criminal act. For those that may feel distressed during tonight's event, we have support people here to help you. Please do not hesitate to reach out. Prior to 2021, if you lost a loved one due to a road criminal act, you were on your own. No support, nothing. It is appropriate that today's launch follows the World Day of Remembrance for Traffic Victims and brings together members of the support group. Today, less than 2 years since the formation of the Road Trauma Support Group, the voice of families that have been affected by road crime, we have built a safety net to support all victims of road crime. No one needs to travel this dark road of trauma alone. No one will be left behind to suffer in silence. Today, I stand here unashamedly with tears in my eyes. Not the same tears that I shed in 2017 when my father, Tanu Star, was tragically killed in Marylands due to a road criminal act. They are now tears of pride, hope, and somewhat joy. Because the Road Trauma Support Group is building the foundations so no family experiences the death of a loved one on New South Wales roads due to a criminal act of another road user. Because the Road Trauma Support Group, the Road Trauma Support Group is building the foundations. The group is providing unconditional, emotional, psychological support to victims of road crime through a statewide network of specialised counsellors. We are engaged in advocating for safer roads and a fair and just outcome in the justice system. We have brought to the surface and changed the way CTP is administered. We have and continue to lobby government for legislation reform in the justice system. We have undertaken a comprehensive research program to understand the long and far-reaching effects of road trauma on the community. None of this would have been possible without the support of a number of people, and I would like to acknowledge them tonight. Detective Superintendent Katie Orr. Katie, when I came to you in 2017, full of despair, you did not turn me away. When I questioned you on why there is no support for families that have lost a loved one due to a criminal act, you agreed that support was needed. And even with your heavy workload, you accepted the challenge and put the wheels in motion. And here we are today. Without your commitment, none of this would have been possible. Katie, would you like to say some words?
Thank you, Tom, for those beautiful words. Good evening and welcome to the official and long-awaited launch of the Road Trauma Support Group New South Wales. In 2017, I was fortunate enough to meet Tom Dar, albeit in tragic circumstances. Tom's father, Tanus, was killed in Marylands by a driver under the influence of drugs. In despair, Tom reached out to me. He did not know where to turn to get the answers about a criminal justice system that he did not understand. After speaking to Tom, and in my role then as the manager of the Crash Investigation Unit, I realised there was a gap in the way that New South Wales Police Force, health and government support the families of people killed on our roads. Too often, we hear of the tragic news of road collisions resulting in the death of a loved one, leaving behind shattered families. Dealing with this loss is not something that anyone is ever prepared for. I was constantly told that grieving families have nowhere to turn for support during this difficult time. I saw an opportunity to establish a road trauma support group, but not knowing how to do it. This led me to contact Martha Jabor, the Director of Homicide Victim Support Group, and reconnect with Tom. I'm so proud to be standing here today as part of the group of people that have made such a difference. The development and establishment of this group would never have been possible without the hard work and dedication of Tom, Duncan, Craig, Roxanne, Patricia, David, Martha and Trish. The time and commitment that you have all put in has made this support group a reality, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I'd also like to acknowledge Martha Jabor, Executive Director of Homicide Victim Support Group. Thank you for your guidance, your wisdom, and for being prepared to get involved. We have moved in leaps and bounds under your stewardship. For 30 years, you have provided hope to families affected by homicide. You are a beacon of light. Without you taking the Road Trauma Support Group under your wing, we would not have achieved what we have today. When I met you with Detective Katie Orr and asked you to help us set up a group similar to the Homicide Victim Support Group, you said yes before I'd even finished my sentence. Thank you. Bernard Carlon, Executive Director, Centre for Road Safety. For a support group to be successful, it needs to be funded. Bernard, when we came to you with our vision and plan, you backed us. You could see the need for such a group. You heard our stories, and a partnership was formed with you and your team at Transport New South Wales. We are most grateful. The members of Road Trauma Support Group. Many members have said to me they wish they were never part of this group. However, they have also stated that they are most grateful that they are due to the support that they have received. You have all opened your hearts and your wounds to support your fellow members. Together, we have forged a friendship that has been built from grief that we have all shared. Together, we have provided peer support for each other. In March 2021, at our inaugural meeting, I articulated a vision of creating a support network. It is only fit and proper that I acknowledge a small number of people who came forward at our inaugural meeting and offered to drive this agenda. You have worked tirelessly, day in and day out, to build the initial foundations of the group. You have put your well-being second to the needs of the group. And you have put your trauma aside to get us to where we are today. I acknowledge founding members Duncan Wake Miller, Craig McKenzie, Roxanne Arnold, Patricia Thomas, David Vidal and Trish Malone. I also acknowledge all other members who have contributed in numerous ways. The fact that you have been prepared to be part of this group and been involved, you are the driving force. We have a lot more to do, and we will continue to forge ahead in honour of our deceased. As is tradition, may I now ask Uncle Alan Murray from the Sydney Local Aboriginal Land Council to perform the ceremony of welcome to country and say a few words.
Yama, good evening. how can I put in some words to do a welcome to country when this morning we had the return of skeleton remains of Aboriginal people from this country, and they were in Germany for well over 170 years. So this morning we had a smoking ceremony as part of our taking and the relationship between individuals and Mother Earth. So we sung, light the fire, light the smoke, and part of our ceremony is to wish them back to this country if they've been gone for 170 years. And it's important to know this, is that when you live, we ask that you be smoked on this land as a baby. And as you go through different stages of life, you go through different stages of life up until the final day in terms of death. And we return people back to the ground. And that's what we expect in our culture. We return our people back to the ground in order to be, how do I put it, be blessed so that your lineage continues. You can see behind me the importance of what's out there. Life is out there. There's a tree there. There's a park there. They give us the life. They give us what we believe is right, and to make sure we can continue. And what we need to be doing more is care for our nature. If you don't care for Mother Earth, Mother Earth is not going to care for our loved ones, our jargon, we call them children, burais, and also our elders. If we can't care for the environment, that's what we need to be doing. That's where we need to be harnessing all our resources to make sure this place called Australia, and we had another name for Australia, but I want to say this, if you want to join with us as First Nations people, and we can share with you with the knowledge about how to live off the land. We've been here for 40,000 years, 60,000 years, and we'll continue to share that knowledge with you about the most important part about this place called Australia is that it's your place too. And to make sure it's your place, you do the right thing. But we certainly will walk in your shoes if you want to walk with our shoes. But certainly, we need to be thinking about our future, and that's what I'm going to say. We need to be thinking about our future to make sure we will continue to live and get the right balance. I know my people have been discriminated. I know my people have been dispossessed of land. I know that my people have been killed because of this land. So it's important to make sure we get the right balance. Certainly, and with that I want to say this, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I want to say this, always was, always will be your land. Apologies for the strong language. I don't normally get to this point and have a very strong, but I certainly wish you all the best for tonight. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Alan Murray. Our next speaker is a member of the Road Trauma Support Group. It's Katie Dokmanovic. Will tell us her story. Thank you, Katie.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's official launch. My name is Katie, and before I tell you about how my son died, I want to tell you about him. He was born in 2002 during a World Cup, which is very fitting, as he went on to love the World Game with immense passion. He started playing at age 4, and over the years he became a referee, not just for our local district, but also for Football New South Wales. He was a coach, a goalkeeper coach, a player. He is older brother to Maximus, boyfriend of Natasha, friend and mentor to many. He was studying to become a high school teacher, English and history. He wanted to give back. Our story is long and complicated, so tonight I will share only a brief overview of the past 22 months, or 697 days. Nicholas was killed due to the negligent actions of an acquaintance who was speeding, and when police attempted to pull him over, he led them on a short pursuit, with the car reaching speeds of over 150 kilometres in a 70-kilometre zone. My son died on the side of the road, alone. When Nicholas died, it was Christmas Eve, 2020. During a time of COVID restrictions, public holidays, the morgue was not open. We were unable to identify his body until the 30th of December. You cannot imagine the intense pain that this caused my family. I was notified officially of his death on Christmas Day, a day that will never be celebrated the same again, a day that I now dread. This process was traumatic. The media coverage, the speculation, the invasion of privacy, the keyboard warriors, all of it is very difficult to deal with. To this day, I have still not spoken to the police officers in charge of the investigation, only the detectives who were tasked with investigating the police involvement. And by the time we get to trial, as the offender believes he's not guilty of manslaughter, it will be over 2 years since the day I lost my best friend, my son. In the days and weeks after Nicholas's death, we were left wondering, what do we do? Who do we talk to? How do we help Max? How do we get help? We had no one. All information we received was irrelevant. We weren't eligible for support via what we thought was a service available to us, victim services. As in its truest sense, we are victims of crime. We were told we were not eligible for compensation via CIRA, as we were not financially dependent on him, and we had to prove more than 10% loss. We didn't even know what that meant. This process was so confusing, especially for someone suffering through the grief and trauma. It was only through daily phone calls to the detectives involved that we were put in touch with Trish from the Homicide Victim Support Group, who advised us to hang in there. There is a group being created for people and families like mine, and through this I have found some incredible people who, even through their own battles, have had the time to reach out, offer a kind ear or a warm hug wherever it's needed. This group is a group that no one wants to be a part of, but one that I am incredibly honoured to be involved with. Together our collective voices will be heard and change will be actioned, and a true justice will hopefully be found, as right now there is no justice for families like mine. We're left in the dark and the wind, fighting a system that is very unjust. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Christmas should be a time of joy and celebration. It should not be a time to mourn the death of a loved one due to a criminal act. Katie, or would you like to introduce the next speaker?
I'd now like to introduce Assistant Commissioner Brett McFadden. He's the Commander of the Traffic and Highway Command and has provided great support to the group. So welcome, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here tonight. It's a very difficult night for a lot of people here. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay respect to First Nations people and leaders past, present and emerging. Uncle Alan, he's gone, has he? Thank you, Alan, for your very powerful and moving words. I'd just like to thank Katie. One of the hardest things you can do is get up here and bare your soul. Thank you for sharing the warmth and the passion and the emotion comes through your story. So thank you for letting us to be part of that. From my point of view, I've been at the Traffic and Highway Patrol Command only for 7 months. However, I've been an operational police officer for 35 years. One of the most challenging things you can do is to try and find the humanity as a member of the police when dealing with some of life's worst scenarios. As a police officer, I often say to our youngest recruits, we get to pull back the curtain of society and really look at the harsh and the damaging and the really difficult parts of human endeavour. And one of the best things that we can do is to be there for people who need us the most. Young probationers say, you say to them, why did you join the police? Some of them want to say, I want to do something different every day. But when you actually pull it all together, they want to help the community. And sometimes dealing with road trauma, well, that's what help looks like today. And it's one of the most challenging things you can do. I just want you to remember that as I mention these next few things, an organisation, particularly a government organisation, we start to look in some respects about what we do in terms of some numbers. But each time I mention a number, I just want you to remember Katie's story, because for every number that I mention, there is a family that's grieving. So at the moment, we have lost 250 lives on the road this year. That's 259 families that are dealing with a story like Katie and many of you here today. At the moment, one of my responsibilities is the Crash Investigation Unit. We're placed all around New South Wales. At the moment, we have 60 active investigations in relation to road trauma, death or serious injury, that is looking at criminal charges. We also have another 176 matters that we are actively involved in live prosecutions for criminal matters resulting from road trauma. Despite the numbers that I've mentioned, this is going to be one of our better years in terms of lives lost. And when you start to think of that, the numbers, and when you start to then equate that to a family, there is a lot of work that we actually need to do. One of the probably most satisfying things is to see the formation of a group such as this. The group of people who are lost, alone, and need support, who actually can find that in each other. And no one's story will ever be the same. It's about recognising the points of difference, recognising the commonality in the loss that's being experienced, and how do you take the hand of another human being and help them go forward. It's a very difficult thing to do. So as we stand here today, and at this place, which is most fitting, that a place of government is actually the place where we launch such a vital and important group to actually help guide us as to what we need to do. Our goal is over the next 10 years, 8 years, reduce fatal accidents by 50% and reduce them by 30% for our serious injuries. Our net goal is towards zero, so that no other family would have to experience this. But we are a quantum leap away from that, and it takes everybody to have a contribution towards that. One of my frustrations as a commander over 1,400 police, we have 650 vehicles, 60 motorbikes on the road, doing everything we can in the interest of public safety and reducing road trauma. So it's something that we talk about each and every day, but we can't do it alone. We need our partners in transport and Centre of Road Safety, and I must commend the work that Bernard Carlin, Peter Dunphy and Tara McCarthy that are here tonight, the work they do in partnership with us. I can't thank them enough. We actually need to look at advocacy groups, the people in this room that can guide us. I need to hear from you through the lens of being a member of a family that has lost someone that's close to you. I need to know, what do we need to do? What's the lever we need to be advocating for? Where do we need to be going? In another environment that I currently am working on a project looking at family liaison for incidents of mass casualty. You may be aware of recently, and I apologise if there's anyone here that's connected to the incident tonight, out of Buxton where we lost 5 young lives. About a month prior to that, I had one of my staff, Detective Sergeant Tony Proctor, on a course, on our pilot course for the organisation for family liaison officers, where we actually recognise that mass casualty events beyond the investigation is a clear and unwavering focus on the family. Recently, I put some information up to our Commissioner and her executive team looking for a focus on what our crash investigators do, and at the centre of that was a focus on family liaison and that function to ensure that we're not overlooking the interests of victims and their families right from the start. Pardon me, right from the start. So as you go forward, and Tom, I thank you for the work that you've done, but as you go forward and find your own momentum and find your own voice, your monthly meetings, please continue to have them at our command. You are more than welcome. But please continue to let us hear your voice. Let us continue to work with the Centre of Road Safety, Transport for New South Wales, and do what we can to pull those levers we need to do to harness the energy of our wider community. We have 8.2 million residents in New South Wales, each of which should be clearly focused on looking after themselves, their families, and protect each other and share the roads on which we move on each and every day. I wish each and every one of you the best for the future as you come to terms with understanding your own path. It's not easy, it'll never go away, but you'll get better at managing it, hopefully through the support of those that you found a kindred spirit in. I do wish you well. All the best.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you for your partnership and the support you have given the group. It's most appreciated. Duncan Wake Miller. Duncan is a founding member of the group and has been very heavily involved in coordinating the road trauma research program. If I can call Duncan to come up and say a few words.
I don't really want to be here. I don't want really any of you to be here, but I am here. I'm the father of Barney Wakes Miller, and some of my family and Barney's girlfriend and friends are here today. Barney was killed by a drunk driver who wasn't breathalyzed by the police at the crash scene. 2 years in court later, the driver walks free. This is a bit of an insight into our family story. The judge suppressed the transcripts of the matter. The judge who undertook the trial review, Judge Jeffries, was described by Transport Minister Andrew Constance as gobsmacking in incompetent sentencing. And this is an insight into part of our story, and I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but there's too many similarities and commonalities in the story between of my family and Katie's and too many people in this room. There's no judicial accountability when it comes to this. There's so much more we can do. Road killers cause a ripple effect that lasts forever. It's not something that you get over. It's not something that's a minor injury as defined by the State Insurance Regulatory Authority and the insurance companies. It's a ripple effect that lasts forever, and it's a ripple effect that impacts the amazing police officers we have, the amazing first responders that we have, the amazing counsellors that we have, the amazing people in this room who provide peer support for each other. But it really is an issue. From the inadequacy of the current legislation and the lack of police and judicial accountability flows many avoidable deaths on our roads. And this is a brutal reality that we need to face with our police, not as an antagonist to our police, with our lawmakers who are really helpful, and I appreciate that, to gentlemen in the audience here. But there is a cavernous gap in the judicial process and the judicial system, and there's a cavernous gap in the services for impacted people of road trauma. When we first met with Tom and the group that we talked about how our stories can make a difference, but also about what evidence would ensure that people act. So on that basis, we decided that we'd add to the power of our stories with some research to prove with evidence there's an irrefutable need for change. So we engaged with an independent research company, and we're producing a report, they are producing a report in the next couple of weeks, which is a really significant research project that goes into all the nuances of what we've been talking about today. They call 55.5 some of the people in the room. They've been working on this project for over a year, and I thank them for staying with us through this process. And what they did is they interviewed in depth 16 incidents of road trauma where someone had been killed by an illegal act of someone else. And they interviewed for up to a couple of hours people involved and loved ones in relation to that. They interviewed 20 stakeholders. These are first responders, policemen, ODPP lawyers, road safety experts, and added those to the list. They did a lot of desktop research, and they also did a survey to the general population of New South Wales with statistical validity to stand up to scrutiny. So we now have a body of evidence. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the detail of this research because I won't do it justice. because I'll probably show an emotional bias to it. So as I go through this and I hit some of the key points on this research, I apologise if I'm slightly biased, right, because I'm still a little bit angry that I lost my son. In fact, I didn't lose my son, he was killed by someone. It's manslaughter. The reality is, when it comes to researching this, is it's immeasurable. And everyone in this room who's been touched by road trauma when someone is killed by a criminal act of someone else understands this. I'll let you read some of those comments, but some of them are from people in this room. Some of them are people who don't want to come to this meeting today because it's too traumatic to even consider this issue. Why is road trauma different from murder, from a king hit, from being killed in the battlefield? It's because it's sudden and violent in nature, and people don't expect to have to face this. And two, the secondary traumatization of going through the process from the incident, when you have to sometimes sit on the curbside to find out whether your loved one is dead or not, or survived or not, to the secondary traumatization of getting bits and pieces of information as the court cases unravel, the investigation considers. Now, everyone's trying to do their best, but we need to change this to do better. It's sudden, unexpected. What people don't understand is when they see this, they think, oh, it's an accident. An accident is not this. These involve high levels of violence. You cannot unsee your loved one when you identify them in the morgue. This is a criminal offence. It is not an unintentional crime as described by the judge in the case at Buxton. That is not true. No other country I can imagine subsidises a perpetrator getting mental health treatment while the victims of road crime have to prove to the insurance company every month that they have an issue. It's not a minor injury. No other form of crime seems to be misreported and unreported, or transcripts in courts suppressed by judges who aren't accountable. Imagine if we could change that. There's a massive re-traumatization process, and this is why this needs addressing. Significant issues that came out in the research, additionally, are the lack of accountability of the driver who willfully broke the law, as well as other involved parties. Too many times, there's incidents that came up in our research where people could have spoken up and stepped in and stopped this happening. Too many times, young drivers are provoked into driving fast. Too many times, recidivist drivers are allowed back out on the road. Too many times, people are misled. Too many times, it should be stopped. We need a shift in attitudes, and to shift in attitudes, we need reform in laws around the acceptability of these behaviours to drive change. This is all coming through in the research. These are real, not imagined points I'm making here. And I think I'm preaching to the converted in most of the people in this room. Imagine the change in behaviour in legislation akin to workplace deaths if these reports were made available. So we're not asking to reinvent the wheel, we're just applying some of the same logic. Road trauma needs to be taken as seriously as other scenarios. 1 in 5, that's 20% of the New South Wales population, has experienced the death of someone in New South Wales roads in their lifetime due to road trauma. 20%. Now, that's not to diminish any other significant community mental health issues, but this puts road trauma in that same bracket. So we've got to act, because every day that we don't act, other people will die. If you look at the ripple effects of road trauma, say there's 8.27 population of New South Wales, 20% of those will know someone in their lifetime who's been killed on the roads. 4% will experience of someone they personally know who's killed by a criminal act of someone else. That's 330,000 people. And 2% of the New South Wales population, that's 165,000, more than you could fit in this room, have experienced the death of a loved one through a criminal act of someone else. Now, this is why it's a significant issue. This is why it's worth fighting for. And I'd like to thank a few people, the Attorney General here, for getting the ball rolling on judicial change. So thank you very much, Mr. Speakman. I'd also like to thank, in his absence, Minister Dominello for making some significant changes in how the CTP system is administered, and we're going to see those coming through. I really appreciate that. I also would like to thank many of the police officers in this room, because you have restored my faith in the police, because this is for you guys, not for me, because my experience, it was significantly diminished. So we need to make this change happen. There's lots of people in this room that are helping that, and I really appreciate it. I'm now going to hand over to Martha Jabor, who is a legend in my lifetime, and she's going to talk about the services.
Talk about legends in my lifetime. There's so many of them in this room. As people were walking in, my heart started to sink a little, because there are so many family members here, but there are so many young people who have to feel this pain, this loss, the trauma. It's just so unfair. So I know my heart and many other hearts in this room that doesn't know your pain feels your pain. Tom, when you met with Katie and I did say I'd help before you asked the question, because you reminded me of 29 years ago, sitting with the parents of Anita Cobby and Ebony Simpson as they poured out their hearts about their sadness, their loss, their tragedies. And I thought to myself, what Tom is telling Katie and I is no different to what Peter and Christine Simpson, Gary and Grace Lynch said to me in those early days. The difference was a motor vehicle was the weapon used in your father's death and many of the people in this room. That's the difference. The grief, the trauma, the pain, the road, that rocky, rocky road that only family members who have been through what you've been through, Tom, will understand. So I did say yes, because I had a pretty good model. Homicide Victim Support Group's been running for 29 years. It's run 29 years because family members have spoken up, like Tom and all the other family members that are here today. So I figured, if we've got a really good recipe, why don't we just use it again? Why reinvent a wheel? So we started off with that first ever support group meeting. Katie and her team at Crash Investigators were able to give us the list of family members that we would invite. Katie sent the invitation out. So it came out from New South Wales Police Force, which gave this group credibility. And I can't thank the police enough for the support that they do give Road Trauma Support Group. We sent the invitation out thinking, well, there might be 10 or 15 people that turn up. It was a full room at Traffic Investigations at their headquarters. Family members just piled in. And once again, it reminded me of the first ever support group meeting that I held for family members at the Institute of Forensic Medicine whose loved ones had been murdered. And so from that, we asked the family members, what is it that you would like this group to look like? What do you want it to do for you? Once again, a mirror image of what I had already worked with and experienced. Support first and foremost, making sure that every family of road trauma got care straight away, got guidance. They were told what their entitlements were, where to get help. And that was only going to happen if the police were involved. So at the moment, we are working on a memorandum of understanding with the police that within 48 hours of a death on our roads due to a criminal act, police will refer to the Road Trauma Support Group, which means that we will be able to contact families straight away. No longer will the Katie's of the world have to wait for a week to identify her son. We can go in there and advocate. So support was the most important thing, and that was pretty easy to do. We knew what we had to do. Get on board some really good counsellors. I'm very proud of Trish Malone, who is one of the counsellors from the Homicide Victims Support Group, who took on the subcommittee for looking at support and how we were going to deliver support to family members of road trauma. And once again, we looked at the great model of Homicide Victims Support Group and we just flipped it. And so what we have today for family members of road trauma are really good relationships with other groups. 3 of them are here today. Penthos, Carla Farah, a support group that offers couples who have had a child die of any death up to $3,000 of counselling for free. Grief Care, Patricia Thomas and her team, who once again offer free counselling, support, advocacy through the Catholic cemeteries and crematoria. And Patricia, just amazing. Esther McKay from Quest for Life. And when you surround yourself with good organisations, an organisation like this cannot fail. So Duncan's already mentioned the Buxton crash. That was horrific. There are family members here, and my heart breaks for you all. So with Buxton, we hadn't dealt with 5 people, young people being killed in one crash. And so Jason Hogan, who heads up traffic investigations, he called me and he said, Martha, there are 5 families that need answers. Will you help us to coordinate a meeting where we bring all the family members together and they all get information from the police all at the one time, so that we're not having to contact 5 families and have to tell the story 5 times. But it would be good because some of the family members didn't even know each other. And so we had that meeting and family members of the Road Trauma Support Group came along to that. And I have to tell you, my heart was just pumping, thinking, oh my God, like all these people coming through. And there were about 35 family members that turned up. And it was heartbreaking. And they were broken. And then after a couple of hours, when it was sort of time to pack up, I looked over and there was a group of the families from Buxton with a group of the family members from Road Trauma. And they were laughing. And I went, my God, our work is done. And so from that, we've been able to put in place counselling services for those families. And I can assure you, we have some amazing counsellors who are here tonight that once contacted said, yes, Martha, I will go into their home. I will offer support and counselling, not for these families to come out and drive to me, but I'll go to them. And so the sensitivity of the counsellors that we've had come on board that will do that is unbelievable. The Road Trauma Support Group is one, sadly, that will grow. It grows on a daily basis. And so one of the big things is that family members know that there is a newsletter that comes out every month. Roxanne Arnold, one of the family members, does that. There's a telephone support line. There are support group meetings. There's one-on-one counselling. There'll be court support, and there has been court support for some family members that we've been able to support since COVID restrictions have come down. So for the family members, there's been a really concerted effort to make sure that support is there first and foremost. Of course, the education part of the group is ongoing and will ramp up. The reform, you've heard a little bit about tonight, and the research, which is just so valuable. But I guess for me, standing before you, my passion is what we can do to help these families to survive another day. They're so hurt, they're so broken. So what can we do, all of us here in this room collectively, to help them? One of the things that I'd like to just point out to some family members and certainly to all you here today is very often we hear of post-traumatic stress. Well, we've come across a really good book that talks about post-traumatic growth. And that's what I wish for each and every family member going through the pain of losing someone they love at the hands of another human being through road trauma. We've got a copy of this book for each of the family members that are here, and we'd like you to take one as you leave. And I pray that it's post-traumatic growth that we all share together. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Commonly known as the mother of the Road Trauma Support Group is Cheryl Ipoviz. Cheryl?
Good evening, everybody. My name's Cheryl Ipoviz. I was invited to be here tonight to share my story with you about how I lost my beloved 18-year-old son, Darren, over 37 years ago. On the night of the 31st of March 1985, I was woken just after midnight to the sound of somebody knocking on my front door, to be told by my neighbour who witnessed that my son Darren had been involved in a serious crash and that he had been killed. My whole world changed forever late that night. My heart was broken. The wave of emotions that went through my body was indescribable. All I wanted was answers. All I wanted was to be with him, but I was restrained from going to the crash scene. Several hours later, I was able to go to Nepean Hospital to identify Darren's body. It was one of the most difficult and painful situations any parent could ever go through. At that moment, all I could think about was how much I wished he had stayed home with his family that night. I just wished I could have hugged him one last time and let him know how much I love him. Sometime later that day, I was told the traumatic details of what had happened that night. Darren was out driving with two friends, just being boys, out for a late night drive. Darren was the front seat passenger when their vehicle and another unidentified vehicle were involved in a street race, resulting in the driver of Darren's car to lose control of his car at high speed and crashed into a power pole. Darren suffered the full impact of the crash, which caused horrific internal and head injuries. He was pronounced deceased not long after arriving at the hospital. The other car that was involved was never located as they fled the scene. Nothing could ever prepare you for that moment in life, to be told that your son had been killed by a reckless driver. My heart was shattered completely as I did not want to believe it was true. I feel sad that my other children had to experience the trauma of that night, as well as the many months that followed. It was a very difficult few months for myself and my family. As a family, we were never the same again. There was not much joy or laughter in our home at that time, which was sad and difficult for us all, especially our children. Our joy was stolen from us because of the stupid decision the driver made, which took our son away from us. There was no help available to us at that time, and I was left reeling from my precious son's death. I just wish there was some sort of help available 37 years ago. I was left to find my own help, to find my own support. There was just no help available at all, especially during the court battles that we had to sit through and how often we had to relive the events of that awful night. Eventually, the driver of the vehicle was charged and convicted on multiple accounts, although he escaped jail time due to his injuries. Darren, my beautiful son, was a loving and caring son, someone to be proud of. Darren was the eldest of three, with his brother Jason and his adored baby sister Nadine. He brought so much joy and happiness to our family. He was so loved by all of us. He had many friends growing up, both boys and girls, and really enjoyed playing soccer, as well as his passion for nice cars and his motorbike. Above all, his love was for his family. He was full of life and happiness and always very loyal, caring to anybody, especially to his family. Darren loved surfing. He would take his surfboard on a train trip to Manly, even though we lived in the western suburbs. We would always spend our free moments and holidays at the beach and shared many happy memories together. Darren was always very protective of myself and Nadine, always being there when we needed him. He was always so thoughtful. Even when he got his very first paycheck, he came home with a gift and flowers for me. I will always treasure those beautiful memories of him forever. When someone is killed by another person on the road, nothing prepares you for the system you have to work with. You're constantly called upon to provide facts and information, and it's extremely difficult to separate the memory of the facts from the memory of the pain. But I was determined to help others and make a change to prevent other people from going through what I've gone through. Today, I'm extremely grateful that I have the privilege to be involved with the Road Trauma Support Group. I know the work that has been done to make changes for those who need support is incredible. I would like to acknowledge Martha, Katie Orr, Duncan, Tom, Craig, and everybody else involved for all their time and effort given to the Road Trauma Support Group. I know that, speaking from my experience, this group has not only impacted my life but many other lives as well. Lastly, I would like to mention my beautiful daughter Nadine, who's present here tonight with us in her position of a New South Wales Police officer working in Highway Patrol. Nadine has been heavily involved with impacting the lives of others who are part of the Road Trauma Support Group. Words could not describe how proud I am of her achievements and her dedication towards her career and helping others. Darren would be so proud of you and all that you do. Nadine introduced me to the Road Trauma Support Group 18 months ago, and straight away I knew I wanted to be involved. I really want my story to leave a legacy to everyone that has lost loved ones and to encourage them that hope and joy does return. Thank you, everybody, for listening to me share.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's not an easy thing to do. Your son Darren would be very proud of you. Thank you. May I now introduce the Honourable Minister for Metropolitan Roads, Natalie Ward, on behalf of the Perrottet Government, to say a few words.
Well, good evening, everybody, and I wish we didn't have to gather as a group, but thank you all for being here this evening. Can I acknowledge the Road Trauma Support Group members, Martha, Tom, Craig, all the founding members, and all the incredible work that you've done to bring this together. Can I acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues and the Attorney-General, Mark Speakman, and the police, who have a critical role to play. We've heard that tonight. but most importantly, friends, supporters and families of loved ones. You are the ones that are impacted by road trauma. Can I thank Uncle Alan for his welcome to country and acknowledge that we meet on the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and thank them for this custodianship of this beautiful land on which we meet and share. Can I extend my thanks to the Road Trauma Support Group for the invitation to be here tonight. The work that you and your members do and that you take on is absolutely vital to families impacted by the grief that you have experienced. We've heard the stories this evening. I've met with many of you, I've heard those stories, and I acknowledge the deep loss that follows losing a loved one to road trauma. Can I say to Katie, to Duncan and to Cheryl, thank you for reopening your wounds. Thank you for sharing your stories and participating. The loss of Nicholas, Barney and Darren, I know does have that ripple effect. It absolutely does go so far, and can I acknowledge all of those who are not with us today. I'm proud that the New South Wales Government continues its partnership with the Road Trauma Support Group. I have met with many of you and I thank you for trusting me and sharing your stories with me, reopening those wounds and exposing yourself to that trauma again to be able to share and to help us to understand how we can do better. I thank you for that, but I acknowledge your grief and the tragedy of your loss. Listening and responding to those in our community who are affected by road trauma with vital counselling and the advice that they receive, we've heard, is absolutely critical at that stage, that beginning of the long journey toward healing. And as Minister for Metropolitan Roads, I'm often asked about numbers and statistics. The number of potholes that are fixed on the roads, the number of speeding fines incurred, the amount of money the government spends on upgrading roads across Greater Sydney. But one number that stays with me is the number of fatalities, deaths on our roads. And as of this morning, as we've heard, we've lost 259 people on New South Wales roads. There's 255 families affected this year. And contained within that statistic, we know, is a number of stories. It's a story of the family affected, of the people affected, the story of that person before that traumatic road incident. We've heard some of those stories this evening. The story of immeasurable harm to those families and communities for each and every life that is lost, which weighs so heavily on them. But perhaps most importantly is the story of those people that can no longer be told. These are real people. These are not statistics. These are real families. These are not numbers, and these are real tragedy. Many people are often shocked to learn that every 46 minutes someone is killed or hospitalised because of a crash on New South Wales roads. Immeasurable harm to families and communities for each and every life lost weighs heavily on us all. And it's because of this harrowing statistic that the New South Wales Government is committed to achieving 0 deaths and serious injuries on our roads by 2050. We've made that commitment. And this forms part of us delivering the 2026 Road Action Safety Plan with our targets to halve deaths and reduce serious injuries by 30% on our roads by 2030. We will invest $2 billion over the next 4 years to achieve these ambitious but very important targets and improve overall safety as we work toward 0. We want to achieve this by building on the success of the Road Safety Action Plan 2021 and focusing on stronger local government action, on engagement, on education, and working along our strong measures to deter unsafe driving behaviour. This is all in the fight to end road trauma. And it's part of that fight to end road trauma that I'm pleased to share this evening with you, that in the next term of government, we will establish a parliamentary inquiry into whether the Road Transport Act can be enhanced to provide better road safety outcomes in New South Wales. The inquiry will consider the appropriateness of the Act in responding to dangerous drivers and driving behaviours. Stakeholders will have the opportunity to raise their lived experience, to share that, in order to ensure government policies and procedures remain fit for purpose, and they are responsible and responsive to preventing serious road incidents, injuries and deaths. The inquiry will complement the referral to the Law Reform Commission initiated by the Attorney-General this month, and I acknowledge his work in that space. That will review and report on serious road crime and the experiences of victims of serious road crimes and their families. As the state's independent law reform advisory body, the Commission plays an important role in independently scrutinising the operation of our laws and our justice system to ensure they remain fit for purpose and they advise on reform. This referral is an important step forward for victims of road crime, and the government will await the review to ensure that in New South Wales we have a justice system that reflects the seriousness of how road incidents caused by dangerous driving affect victims, families and the wider community. We are listening to family members of victims who've been tragically killed as a result of tragic road crimes, and we will work together with New South Wales Police, with Transport for New South Wales and stakeholders, importantly, such as the Road Trauma Support Group, to ensure zero deaths on our roads by 2050. I give my heartfelt thanks to the Road Trauma Support Group for the invitation to be here tonight, for the work that you do, for the advocacy and communication, the support, most importantly, that you provide to families that don't ever want to be and don't choose to be a part of this circle. Long after a crash, family and friends, of course, continue to suffer the impact. The ripple effect is real. And it can be a real and practical comfort to know that there is help available to provide that emotional support and guidance through all of the issues that you've spoken about, so many have experienced through the months and the years that follow. I again express our New South Wales Government's firm commitment to reducing road trauma to zero so that others don't suffer the personal losses and grief that you have. I thank you for the work that you're doing. Please keep going. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Minister. May I also introduce on behalf of the New South Wales Labor Party, the Shadow Attorney-General, Mr. Michael Daly.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. Can I begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation? I acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, the Attorney-General, the Minister Natalie Ward, and also Jenny Aitchison, the member for Maitland, and others that might be here that I can't spot from the crowd, but usually they'll wave and they haven't, so I've got that one right. Can I also thank the founding members of this wonderful group, Tom, Cheryl, Duncan, Katie and others, for the work that you've done and no doubt will continue to do. There are moments in public life that you just don't forget. And I've experienced a very powerful one, you have tonight, in Martha Jabor standing here and saying to each of us that when she met with Tom and people from this group initially, she had the same feeling she did 29 years ago when she met with the families of people who were the victims of crime, like the families of Anita Cobby. That's a powerful statement, Martha. I will never forget that lesson. I will never forget that sentence. Words matter. Words are powerful, and we've heard some powerful words tonight, once again, from victims who don't want to keep retelling, but will because they know the power of those words. When I became the Minister for Roads in late 2008, it was my sombre duty on New Year's Day, I think it was, in 2009, to report the road toll. And for the first time ever, it had gone under 400. And I received a lovely handwritten letter from an old fellow. I think his name was Peter Morris. I'm operating from memory. who was a former Liberal Party Minister for Roads probably 2 decades earlier, who congratulated the government of the day for bringing the road toll under 400 because he said in his time the best he could do was 1,000. And so, yes, it was a stark improvement, but I just recalled when I read that letter that it still didn't take into consideration that there were 399 families who were absolutely devastated. And yes, it was an improvement, but the devastation was there nonetheless. And one of the first groups who captured my attention was the New South Wales Centre for Road Safety, Soames Job and people like that who were attached to the RTA, and they made sure that in the first days of my ministry for roads, they brought in families just like the ones we've heard from today. And so what I had my staff do was to put on top of my desk the first thing that I would see every morning, the road toll overnight. And my heart would beat with expectation, hoping that it would be a zero. And you might go for weeks and weeks with it being zero, and then you'd have a cascade of deaths. But here we are at 259, and let's hope it stays at 259. I was very fortunate as well after I finished up as Minister for Roads to become the Minister for Police, and that work in relation to road safety continued. The associations that I made continued, and they were unfortunate associations. We wish we didn't have to come together like this, but we do. So we have to make it count, and this group will, and they already have made it count. And I know that on behalf of the legislators that are here tonight, and many that aren't, we can all say this. We hear you, we see your pain, we feel your pain, we acknowledge the indescribable waste and the wrongs that need righting. We hear your stories, we can't forget them, we shouldn't forget them, and we won't. We have a duty to ensure as best we can that no one feels your pain. And so our collective aim is to put this group out of business, to go, as Brett said earlier, to net zero, as lofty as that ambition might be. This is a young group, formed in 2021, but already it's made great strides, as you've heard from the Minister tonight, with another commitment. These are bipartisan commitments, of course. As Martha does, she's been introducing the Road Trauma Support Group to people in this building, and so it was sort of a pleasure, or it was a pleasure, painful pleasure, to meet with members of the group a few months ago. They then attended a victims forum that the opposition held, and from those discussions, as an opposition, we've thought this, that there should be an independent victims commissioner, that the support of counselling services ought to be extended to victims of people killed in road crime, and that there ought to be a very high-level review of laws relating not only to the applicability of laws, as the Attorney-General has already announced in referring that to the Law Reform Commission with our support, but also, as Duncan said, to what happens in the court to victims and whether the procedures are appropriate there. So already this group is making a difference. So congratulations to you. Thank you for the invitation to all of us to be here tonight. Thank you to Transport for New South Wales for supporting the group, to the police, to the Homicide Victim Support Unit, but also to the counsellors. There is a chronic shortage of counsellors in Australia. Chronic. So if there's any young people here wanting to make a difference and have wanting a change in career, go and become a counsellor. When the darkness descends, you're the ones who bring the light. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Even though our loved ones may have been taken away from us, they still live in our hearts. We've put a PowerPoint presentation together to honour our deceased.
You sheltered me from harm, kept me warm, kept me warm. You gave my life to me, set me free, set me free. The finest years I ever knew were all the years I had with you, and I would give anything I own, give up my life, my heart, my home. I would give everything I own just to have you back again. You taught me how to love, what it's all. You never said too much, but still you showed the way, and I knew from watching you. Nobody else could ever know the part of me that can't let go, and I would give anything I own, give up my life, my heart, my home. I would give everything I own just to have you back again. Is there someone you know, you're loving them so, but taking them all for granted? You may lose them one day, someone takes them away, and they don't hear the words you long to say. I would give anything I own, give up my life, my heart, my home. I would give everything I own just to have you back again, just to touch you once again.
Road trauma does not discriminate. It can strike anyone at any time. To our friends in Parliament that are here tonight, do not wait till you have felt the sting of road trauma. Do not wait until you receive a knock on your front door from a police officer informing you that your loved one will never be coming home again. Work with us. We will do the heavy lifting. We do it every day, knowing we now live the rest of our lives without our loved ones due to a selfish, heartless, criminal act that could have been avoided. I do thank and acknowledge some members of Parliament that have given us an audience and been prepared to hear our stories and have acted to make some necessary changes. Legislation reform for road crime is an issue for all Parliament members. Regardless of whether you are in government or opposition or what your portfolio may be, if your loved one is a motorist, a passenger, a pedestrian, road crime legislation reform is your portfolio. Let's all work together to prevent any further trauma. You have taken an oath in Parliament to serve the public. We are calling for standalone legislation, including standard non-parole periods for road crimes that result in a death, along with the inclusion of victims of road crime in the Charter of Victims' Rights Act, public reporting of road crime and victim impacts panel. Real change is the only way to win back the community confidence. We hope tonight has encouraged you to look beyond tinkering around the edges of amendments to road crime legislation. Getting behind the wheel, knowing you are affected by drugs and or alcohol, driving in a dangerous manner, speeding, the vehicle becomes a lethal weapon, and it is the driver that pulls the trigger and fires that fatal shot. These criminal acts need to be classified and redefined as vehicle manslaughter and need to be treated as such by the law. It's not about vengeance, it's about justice. The justice system needs to start administering justice to the victims, not the offender. Let's rebalance the scales of justice together. It's not our intention to remove the rights of the accused. It's our intention to reclaim our rights. Sadly, too often, we've seen judges focus more on the rights of the accused at the expense of the victim's rights. Offenders being sentenced to home detention, good behaviour bonds for destroying the lives of innocent families. For the members here tonight, change to the justice system has now come too late. We've already paid the ultimate price. But for others, there is hope. We are seeking solid commitments from all political parties in the lead up to the next election, focused on legislative reform of road crime. We want no other family to ever experience the death of a loved one on our roads due to a criminal act. Towards zero. There is enough of us here tonight that have felt the pain. We want no more. Let's act now. The Minister of Metropolitan Roads, Natalie Ward, thank you for your commitment to establish a parliamentary committee into road crime legislation. We look forward to working with you to make our roads safer. The Shadow Attorney General, Michael Daly, thank you for your support and your commitments to the group. Members of Parliament, these are our children, our brothers and sisters, our husbands and wives, our mums and dads, all sent to their grave before their time because of a selfish, heartless criminal act by someone who had no regard for their lives. They are all innocent people who have done nothing wrong. We have a duty to honour our dead. We have a duty to ensure their horrific, brutal deaths are not in vain. And above all, we have a duty to the New South Wales public to ensure that their family photos do not appear on that screen. The Road Trauma Support Group will not rest until change is instigated, nor shall we waver from our objectives. Political parties may come and go. However, the Road Trauma Support Group will always remain to ensure that no other family is forced to endure the pain and suffering and trauma caused by a road criminal act. The Road Trauma Support Group will play its role. We need government to also play their role. I will finish off with a quote from a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Saint Mother Teresa. I can do things that you cannot. You can do things that I cannot. Together, we can do great things. Thank you for your attendance tonight. If I may reiterate, for those that may be feeling distressed, please reach out. We have counsellors here tonight to assist you. Thank you.